Welcome to Our View. I am Lorrie Hull Smithers, the host and producer. And this show airs for a month on Sundays at 3:30 a.m. and 11:30 a.m., Monday at 7 a.m., Thursday at 8:30 p.m., and Saturday at 5:30 p.m., among other times. It was formerly called Just Between Us. So if you look us up on the internet, it's under SB-Just Between Us, and we have many shows also up on the internet. Now, today, this studio and myself are honored and delighted to have as our guest Sara Miller McCune. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, good. I'm so impressed with all that Sara has done as a philanthropist and also as the founder and executive chairman of Sage Publishing. And Sage Publishing...
Sage Publications, actually.
Publication, I'm sorry. Do correct me. I may say some other things that aren't quite correct, too. And Sage Publications is the largest independent publication house in the world. And I notice you have offices in Singapore, India, London, and here.
As well as a few other places.
Many places worldwide. And Sara, you're to be commended at all you have done, not only in Santa Barbara, but all over the world to enhance the culture of our people, to educate and to entertain and to inspire. And I am just blown away that you started Sage Publications with $100.
500.
Oh, was it 500?
Yes, but half of that was the value of a used air conditioner.
Okay.
So some people may discount it a bit. But that was, as my mother used to say, when a dollar was a dollar.
Right.
1965. The value of a dollar then went a little further, let's say, than it does today.
And I congratulate you that you're here with us on your 50th anniversary of Sage Publications. And I think our audience would love to hear about how you started and about your life. I believe you were born in Manhattan, is that correct?
That is indeed correct.
And so tell us a little bit about your life and then how you started Sage Publications with $500.
Okay. Well, I was born in Manhattan in February of 1941, and I had a pretty easy childhood. We lived in Manhattan for the first 5 years of my life in what was, and I think still is called a neighborhood, the neighborhood of Yorkville. So it was the east side, probably around 82nd Street. And then we moved from there to the Bronx, which became a war zone after we had left, as was described in The Bonfire of Vanities, a book by Tom Wolfe.
Oh, yes.
And,
I taught his daughter in one of my acting classes.
Right. Well, so you know, but in the period from 46, just after World War II, till 1950, it wasn't a war zone, actually. It was still a good neighborhood, cluster of neighborhoods. It was still a place where I could visit my grandmothers, both of them on Sundays for tube lunches, unfortunately, because one grandmother would be jealous if you ate with the other grandmother and so on. And so that was always a difficult part of the week. But when I was 10 and my younger brother was 5, our parents moved to Queens with us. And so I grew up in Queens County of New York and went to Queens College, which is part of the City University of New York. And while I was in high school and the first few years of college, I was very active in a youth organization and I attended on their behalf, since I was at that point national president of the girls group, I attended the White House Conference on Children and Youth as a delegate.
Oh, my daughter also did that as a Wisconsin delegate.
Oh, that's great. In 1960?
No, it was a little bit later. She would attend
yes.
conferences in Washington, yes.
Yes. Well, I did a lot of work in Washington, actually, and grew to know it and love it. But I also had the opportunity to travel around the U.S. and Canada, speaking to small and large groups of people and doing a bit of fundraising and just generally working on areas of social justice in a way that teenagers might be able to contribute to that idea.
So then, how did you meet your husband?
Well, that was after I graduated college. So let's see, I graduated when I was 4 months past my 20th birthday because I'd skipped a grade in junior high, what we call middle school now. And I went to work for Macmillan, the American Macmillan, which was based in Manhattan.
And that's a publishing company where you must have trained to become a
I learned quite a bit about the publishing business there, including a great deal of what not to do. But it was very, very interesting because it was at a time of what I call merger mania. Kroll Collier had just acquired Macmillan, which prior to that had been at first a subsidiary of the British Macmillan, which was established by a family in the UK, the same family that one of the British prime ministers in the 20th century belonged to. And when they gave up the total control of Macmillan Inc., it was on the open market for a while. But as they say, it as a subsidiary, it was run by a guy whose last name was Brett, B-R-E-T-T, and his son succeeded him, and they say that it's shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. So the 3rd generation was a victim of the merger mania and the acquisition and was sent to a business school in Upper Manhattan, but even trying to get an MBA, he was not a raging success. And the last we heard of him at the publishing company, he was selling yachts in Florida. So that ended the family reign.
I'm glad that hasn't happened to you.
And that's some of what I learned, how I learned what not to do in publishing. My second year at Macmillan, I was fortunate to work for a very brilliant guy who'd worked for the New Deal administration when Roosevelt was president, and he was brought in as a result of the merger, and I did a lot of research on different genres of publishing and did westerns and mysteries outsell religious books or children's books or vice versa. Actually, the children's books were quite successful, and some of the religious books as well. But they were having a rough patch with regard to their fiction and nonfiction for the general public. So they were still living in the glory days of Gone with the Wind, which kept them afloat during the Depression. But they'd made the mistake of publishing Forever Amber with their paper rationing during World War II instead of college textbooks, of which they had many good ones. And so the numbers by the time of the merger just didn't really add up. They were being outpaced by firms like Prentice Hall and McGraw-Hill and in the college market, and they were floundering. And
so because of their floundering, is this what inspired you to start your own publication company?
Well, it took a little longer than that.
I see.
First, I left Macmillan after 2 years and worked in England in Oxford, England, in fact, for Pergamon Press. And Robert Maxwell at that time was the entrepreneur and owner of Pergamon. He was a colorful but not necessarily the most ethical of business people. And it was a company that sold scientific, technical, and medical books. And so I learned a lot more about marketing and selling books in niche fields, whether it was in science or any of the other fields. And I learned a lot about working in foreign countries and selling those kinds of specialized materials in international markets. Mm-hmm. And that, plus learning how not to manage people from Robert Maxwell, aided me greatly in starting Sage Publications in 1965.
And becoming the executive chairman.
Well, then I was
Which you are.
Then I was the president, I was the editor, I was the salesperson, I was in charge of marketing, I was in charge of personnel. I learned the hard way with personnel. I hired a woman named Trudy to be sort of the office manager, cum secretary, cum telephone answerer, and so on. And Trudy, it turned out after a while, when I realized she wasn't really doing the job all that efficiently, was a person who filed all of our purchase orders under U for university. So University of Wisconsin and University of Utah and University of Hawaii. And I wondered why, when I was looking for a particular purchase order, the U folder was quite so fat. But that was the problem.
Trudy was not really doing her job
She
well.
wasn't with it when it came to the alphabet.
Right.
And so I would say her literacy skills perhaps were inadequate. And so that was the end of Trudy, and also pretty close to the end of my time in New York and my decision to move the company westward.
And that brought you to Santa Barbara?
It brought me initially to West Los Angeles and Beverly Hills.
I see.
Don't ask why, because at that time we still had very little money. But it was the south side of Beverly Hills, so it was closer to Olympic Boulevard than Wilshire, and therefore the rents were still affordable.
I understand.
It was the parking that killed us, actually. Parking spaces went up during 10 years from $25 a person to $100 a person. And that rate of coincided with the fact that we went from a 4-person staff to close to, I don't know, 50, 60, 75 people. And it was just unaffordable. I mean, it was at that point more than the office rent.
So now your office is in Thousand Oaks, is that correct? And the Sage Publication Company is up on the internet with many pages of, for instance, how to apply for publication with your company.
Well, that would be what we call scholarly skills.
Right.
But Sage is basically, for one thing, the name was, I was working with a list of what sounds like a scholar, and in biblical times, scholars were known as sages.
Uh-huh.
My husband was playing tricks with the first letters of our first names, and he came up with Sage as S.A. for Sarah and G.E. for George. At that time, he was consulting with Sage and still a vice president at Macmillan.
And I think there's a richly deserved founder's room at UCSB in honor of your husband and you, called the Miller McCune Founders Room.
I think it may be called the McCune Founders Room or the McCune, whatever it is. It's the room for the Interdisciplinary Humanities Center.
Right.
And it has a beautiful view on campus, one of the best. And it's really, the thing that's named on campus for George is a dissertation fellowship in his name, George D. McCune fellowship with the communication department in UCSB.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And that was probably the first bit of philanthropy that I did with UCSB.
Yes, and now you sponsor the Arts and Lectures program through UCSB at various venues, including Granada Theater.
Well, I'm one of the, I'm co-chair of the Arts and Lectures Council, which is fundraising.
Right.
But I am not the primary sponsor of their programming. That honor goes to actually my friends Linda Wyman and Bruce Haven from lynda.com, which is based
these
in
booklets.
I sponsor individual programs
Yes,
like Shakespeare's
they're
Globe.
all over the city, including something from your Miller McCune Foundation.
The McCune Foundation
Yes.
does sometimes collaborate, as does the Miller McCune Center for Research Media and
Right.
and Public Policy,
Right.
which is based here in Santa Barbara.
And I want to congratulate you on that, and also the fact that this is like the 4th or 5th time that your McCune Foundation has been awarded an NEA grant, the National Endowment of the Arts.
I think you're mixing me up with some other foundation there.
NEA,
No, we have never had a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts.
well, maybe it's Arts and Lectures. The Arts and Lectures program is what was given the NEA grant. And
That
you
would
sponsor
certainly
the Arts
be-
and Lectures program, which was
that
given
would certainly be a very deserving honor for
Yeah.
Celeste Bellecci, the
And I believe
head
I
of
read it's the
A&L.
Arts and Lectures program that was given
Exactly.
this NEA grant.
Yes.
Because I was on the NEA board in Wisconsin when I was a professor there, and I know that you have to go through many, many different places
they really
to get
make
the grant.
you jump through the hoops.
And I correct myself, it was the Arts and Lectures program that was given this grant. And I thought it was you because you sponsor so many arts and lectures.
No, I work very closely with Celeste Bellecci and her
Yes.
staff, and I think the Arts and Lectures program is indeed one of the best college programs in college or university programs in the United States and indeed in the world. They do over 200 different programs each academic year.
And it's also open to the public.
Most of it is open to the
Right.
public, and virtually every artist or lecturer who comes to campus also does something in terms of educational outreach with our community.
And I think it's wonderful that you're one of the sponsors.
I'm privileged to be that,
Right.
yes.
Now, if someone wants to apply to SAGE, they go to your website, is that correct? And
If they wish corporate funding from our corporate philanthropy, yes, they would go to SAGE, but that funding currently is focused on education and has to meet very specific criteria. There is also a smaller program that is managed by our employees, and that supports a program. Well, they actually support programs in Ventura and Santa Barbara counties, and many of them are related to social justice or educational justice, community improvement. SAGE as a company actually is the sponsor of the International Baccalaureate program, for example, at the Conejo Valley School System, which is the area around Thousand Oaks.
And you're also an author.
Yes, I am.
I was very impressed with the memorial you wrote for your friend, is it Lainey?
Lainey Fleblon.
In the Independent.
Well, that, and of course my book about SAGE publications.
Your memory, your memorial. I think this would
Well,
be...
that memoir was just the first 45 years. And we're now working on revising that for our 50th anniversary.
Now, as I told you earlier, I'm constantly revising my book on acting and directing, too. And what impresses me with your book is the caliber of your pictures, because they're wonderful. And as a self-publisher, that just drove me crazy.
Well,
trying to get the pictures.
I owe that all to the professionals at Sage
You have
Publications.
wonderful professionals with Sage Publishing.
Yes, I do.
Who bring your...
Sage Publications does a very good job for its authors.
Right.
And we've prided ourselves on doing that for decades.
Now, I also noticed in these great booklets that you put out...
That the university puts out.
There's an introduction by someone from Sage in one of them. So you're involved with it. But I noticed
that's Celesta on that picture.
Yes. You had something to do with bringing a Shakespearean production here from the Globe Theater. And
I'm on the American board
terrific.
of Shakespeare's Globe Trust.
Yes. And you have offices still in London?
Still, yes, in the sense that they were started in 1971, but that subsidiary is actually the managing partner in our global group for Sage International, and so they, the managing director of Sage London and the deputy directors are responsible for the operations in India, where we have 5 offices, the largest obviously in Delhi.
Singapore?
Sage Asia Pacific is based in Singapore, but has staff through a foreign-owned entity in Beijing and Shanghai. They also have staff in Malaysia, Japan, Taiwan, and we just opened last year, which is 2014, that is, offices in Mexico City to add to our Rio office in Brazil, and the Cairo sales office, well, that was opened earlier, but last year, in addition to opening up shop in Mexico City, we also opened up an office in Australia, which will primarily focus on kindergarten through 12th grade educational products, most notably a series called Visible Learning, which is written by Professor John Hattie and is recognized in North America and indeed in Australasia and all around the world as one of the best programs for literacy for kindergarten through 6th grade children.
That's terrific. And it's really close to my own heart, too, because my master's thesis was a kindergarten through 12 and community program in theater and theater instruction. And then, as you know, my PhD was Strasberg's method for a textbook for colleges and universities and professional people. So we're on the same wavelength, and you did this memorial for your friend because she was so interested in education in all areas, right?
Well, Lainey was particularly interested in education and educational outreach as a way of enhancing students' learning through the performing arts and to some degree the visual arts. She was terribly upset when art appreciation classes and music appreciation classes were removed from classroom curricula.
Oh, I was too.
In the public schools. and the same, you know, we both felt that very, very badly.
Oh, yes.
And took it to heart. And I have also been upset, frankly, by the lack of funding for school librarians in Santa Barbara County. So in her memory, I am in the process of setting up a fund which will provide opportunities for local school children to enjoy the performing arts and the rich performing arts
I think
that
that's
can
terrific.
be found here in Santa Barbara.
Now, is that through the Miller McCune Foundation that you have set up, or is this a separate
No, this is a
group?
A separate group that is in the process of formation and includes people like Carla Hahn and Anna Michael Toews, and Dr. Andrew Messner, who was a tremendous friend of Laney's. A number of the local performing arts companies will, of course, be involved in an artist council. So, for example, the Arts and Lectures program at UCSB will be involved with that side of things, as will I'm sure the ballet will be on board, and, State Street Ballet, which Laney helped to found with Rodney Gustafson, and Opera Santa Barbara.
And programs
Music
at the
Academy,
Granada Theater?
All sorts of programs, mainly at the Granada for public appreciation, but as you know, there's a lot that goes on campus, and in some cases there'll be a lot involved in other venues, including small theaters, and I don't know where all it will go. This is something that is just in formation.
And speeches can also be given at the Granada bookstore, where I talked about my book.
Certainly, that's something that is very
That's
near and dear to my heart as well.
Yes.
But you need to understand that this is not part of either the Miller McCune
I see. This is a separate
Center or the McCune Foundation.
Now we have 1 minute left, so whatever you want to say about what the topic that you just hit on, or something else, go ahead.
What I want to say is that I've had a great life. Our company is run by and fun to work for. We have nearly 1,500 employees worldwide. They're great. And I'm just happy and excited about celebrating 50 years
Oh, it's wonderful.
of publishing and disseminating information, including an award-winning magazine, Pacific Standard, which is brought to you from here in Santa Barbara. And we have this article about women not being welcomed on the internet up for a national award on February 2nd. Pray for us.
I'm eagerly looking forward to reading it. I just feel such kinship with you, and thank you for telling us all about everything you've done, everything you plan to do in particular about education in women, and being on our show.
You're quite welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Okay, I think our show is over.
Okay, great.